Hello and welcome to another episode of Unstuck with Hypnopunk Transformation with Edge, coming to you live from the penthouse suite somewhere in the metropolis called Toronto. Today's episode is all going to be about anger, what it is, how it affects you, why it's good, why it's bad, and what to do about it. It is all coming up. But as always, a big shout out to all of you that have left those 5-star reviews on iTunes, on Google Play, on YouTube, or wherever else you've found the Unstuck podcast. Thank you so very much. That's what makes me want to put out more content for you and bare my soul to you, because I sure as hell ain't getting paid for it. This is not monetized, and the only way I know you're enjoying this is if you leave those comments, you leave those reviews, the stuff that you like, the stuff that you don't like, the stuff that you would like to hear in the future. It helps me to craft future episodes of this podcast, so it's very, very much deeply appreciated, and is the only payment I take if you enjoy them. And as always, once you do leave those reviews, shoot me an email at mail, M-A-I-L, at LUKENOSIS, LUKENOSIS.com. With a screenshot, let me know, and we can book you a 30-minute Unstuck session via Skype. Now, please bear in mind, the Unstuck Power session is not a hypnosis session. It is not a opportunity for you to hemorrhage all your problems over me, because I don't work like that. It is an opportunity for you to tell me about an area of your life that's just sticking you from getting to the next level of having more freedom and happiness in life, and you get me for 30 minutes. And by the way, I'm fucking expensive, so you got me free for 30 minutes to help you brainstorm some ways to become unstuck and to take back full control of your life. That being said, back onto the topic at hand, which is anger. What is it? How does it affect you? Why is it bad? Why is it good? What to do about it if you have too much of it? Now, as somebody that has suffered from anger and done anger to themselves for many years, it is my go-to unresourceful emotion. And when you look at the work of, I want to say, David Hawkins and his hierarchy of emotions, both positive and negative, although there's no real negative emotions, and we'll get into that a little bit later on, so I'll rephrase that and call them unresourceful emotions at times, but it makes more sense if I just say negative emotions. You understand what I mean, not that I judge them necessarily as being negative. But when they look at consciousness and how spiritual a person can be, you have to get through certain negative emotions, and on the bottom end of these negative emotions are things like guilt, shame, sadness. These are the lowest vibrational negative emotions. However, anger and rage is very high on the level of emotional consciousness, and it's just basically on that brim, on that level, that when you get through that, all the positive emotions start to happen. So anger is probably the highest, most functional positive and negative emotion that you can feel. Now, it can be incredibly destructive, and we're going to go on to that a little bit later on. But again, speaking from somebody that has suffered a lot of anger in their life and done anger to themselves, and working with many people that have anger issues, if you will, when you're angry, here's some positive things about it. You can get a lot of shit done. You can have a gigantic chip on your shoulder, which can propel you to great heights in your career, in your health, in your relationship. Anger is an amazing motivator, inspirator. Yeah, there you go. Just made that shit up out of thin air. To get you moving in life. It can be very, very useful. But if you stay stuck at purely anger, you're going to burn out at some point, and you're going to become very toxic if you stay in that environment of just living off anger. Because really what anger is an overstimulation of the nervous system. And in my dealings with myself and all the work I've done with myself and many clients for 22 years, is almost every single time, without question, has been my experience, anger is just a cover. It is just the top. It is just the lid on sadness. And when I looked at myself, in some introspection on myself, what I realized is I switched off a lot of sadness in my life, because with sadness I couldn't move. I was stuck, and if I was still stuck, there would be no Unstuck podcast, would there? And with sadness, I was stuck. It was like being in quicksand. It was like being in cement with my legs. I could not move. I could not get out of bed. I could not run a successful business. I could not be a successful change worker. I could not have relationships with people. I could not train, exercise, run my body the way that I wanted to, because I had no inspiration and I had no motivation. So then, because I didn't deal with the sadness, this thing called anger came along and was like, all right, you know what? I'm still going to make you feel shitty. I'm still going to overstimulate your nervous system and give you fight or flight every day. Adrenaline running in your body, even when you're at home alone. And there is no threat there other than Mr. B and Tigra when they are chasing a pigeon. Yeah, that's a shout out to my cats right there. They're very, very lame when it comes to getting pigeons. But anyways, back to anger. It was there, and when I got really, really angry at stuff, I could get shit done, and amazing lot of stuff in business, in my health, in relation. I was moving, I was successful. I didn't have a moment to stop, but it affected my sleep, it affected my mood. That all these things I was achieving, I didn't feel it. I didn't even feel good about it. No matter how much money I was making, how many people I helped, that feeling didn't really stick around, that good feeling, for more than a couple of moments, because I was so overstimulated with this cortisol, that chemical that was running through my veins, through the adrenaline that was consistently running through my brain and my body, even before I go to sleep, because I thought I was always under attack. So it just became fucking exhausting, and it was such a drain. It was a drain on me. It was a drain on my relationships, because I would be oversensitive to everything, because I always felt that I was under attack, and it was exhausting for the people, significant others in my life at that time. And no more was it exhausting than to myself. And I remember I had an incident in the not too distant past that made me basically confront my sadness, for want of a better word. All my anger had dissipated, and underneath it was untreated sadness. And I'm like, well, I've got all these hypnosis skills, I can hypnotize them away. And I said, you know what would be the most heroic thing that I could do here? It would be to sit with this sadness, let it come for me. Because all I know for sure is, no matter how strong this negative emotion is, it will go at some point. It has to, as long as I'm alive. So I sat there, and the sadness was there, and it made me slow down. But magically, about 90% of all my anger just dissipated from every aspect. It cross-contextualized in my life. It blended into every area of my life. And I was sad, but I was more connected with my body. I was more connected with what's happening, rather than what I thought was happening. And although it was not a feeling, it was not a destination, sadness that I wanted to stay at, it really swung that pendulum the opposite way that I'd been living my life for so many years. And when I allowed myself to feel the sadness, not run from the sadness, not analyze the sadness, just feel it, feel the sensation, and be there. Even though I wanted to run away, my body's like, get angry, because then you can move, then you can do stuff. But this sadness, the fear was, what if I just stop moving and stop doing anything and just die, essentially? But I didn't. I didn't just die. I didn't stop moving. I kept moving, and it was moving a bit slower, like I was throwing punches and kicks in a swimming pool underneath the water. Everything was slower, but I still got shit done. And that overreaction of the nervous system just got switched off, and it was quite an experience. So, in my experience with myself and over 5,000 plus clients and counting who do have issues with sadness, do have issues with anger, there's always some untreated, untended, some masking over of sadness that they need to face, not necessarily analyze, but they need to feel in order to let go of that anger, because that anger's there as that highest level negative emotion to keep being a warrior, that even though you've got 10 arrows in your back, you have that anger, you can keep going, you have that rage, you can keep moving, you can win the battle, you can be the warrior. And it is very effective, and it is very powerful, and it is a very strong and at times needful thing to have. But when you live there, just like if you live in sadness, it's fucking exhausting. So I want to share with you three ways today, or any day that you use these skills, how to deal with your anger. Here are the 3 ways. There's a video on there that you'll see on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/LUKENOSIS, LUKENOSIS.com. It's called Finger Hacks, and I think it's called How to Get Rid of Anger in 1 Second. Yeah, it really is called that. It's not just clickbait. This just happens to work. It's essentially, on your non-dominant hand, you push down your little finger, your baby finger, with 2 fingers, just 2 fingers, not a fist, but 2 fingers of your other hand. And what that does is an interesting thing to your biochemistry. Now, when you feel anger, when you feel rage, your amygdala, the part of your mind, part of your brain that assimilates emotions, it scans down in a millisecond, even quicker than that, even quicker than you can imagine. It scans down to see if you're making fists or if your hands are indeed tense, because if they are, it's signifying that there is real danger, fight, flight or freeze. You've heard about that. And also, if you've got a tight jaw, a stiff jaw, you can have your mouth open and still have a tight jaw. So if your jaw is tense, if you're making fists with your hands, or there's a lot of tension in your hands, your amygdala says, all right, so I should fire off the adrenaline system inside your body, because you need to get ready to fight, flight or freeze. So when your amygdala scans down and it realizes you're not making fists with either hands, because on your non-dominant hand you're pushing down your little baby finger with 2 fingers from the opposing hand, and you've relaxed your jaw, it just literally switches off that biochemical reaction in your body. So that's in a second how you can switch off anger. Now, do you do it once and all your anger from your 30 some odd years on earth disappears and dissipates? No. Are you just masking it and disguising it? Actually, no. What you're doing is essentially putting a roadblock up, and a roadblock is you've been triggered by something. And guess what, folks? Triggers are always going to be out there. You can't control the trigger. What you can do is you start to feel it, and as soon as you start to feel yourself going to anger, you just push down your little finger, your pinky finger on your non-dominant hand. You relax your jaw, and what you'll notice is all the anger dissipates, or it certainly drops to a more manageable level. It's essentially putting a roadblock up on your highway, your 3-way of anger, and it's saying, hey, you know what, you can't go down this road today. There's a roadblock, you can't go down it. You have to go down a different road to get your same needs met. And studies prove that every time you interrupt an addiction, and this is just an addictive behavior, folks, every time you do it, the new neurological pathway in your brain opens up of a new way for you to assimilate and to deal with the situation, rather than having to go down that old way. It basically strengthens the muscle fibers, the neurons in your brain, to give you a new neural network to go down every time you don't go down the old road, which is, oh, I'm just going to get angry and I'm going to let that secrete in my body and feel that rage. Every time you don't go down that road, the opposite is true. You go down the opposite road. This is how it works neurologically in your brain. Now, is it appropriate to feel angry sometimes? And is it even good to feel anger sometimes? Abso-fucking-lutely. You can get a shitload done. Totally. It's totally appropriate at times, and it can be very motivational. However, if you live there, if you live in any emotion, even that sadness, if you're there all of the time, then you don't have any choice. You're essentially a prisoner, because you can't get off the island called anger. You can't get off the island called sadness. You are essentially a prisoner. But as soon as you've got another way of doing it, another way of doing that feelings, yeah, you could get angry. if you want. You could get angry at that situation, that trigger that's happened, but you could also equally deal with it in another way. Now you have choice. You have choice in what you do. Yeah, you can do anger, but you've got the opposite road, the opposite emotion, another thing to do. And all my work's about giving you choice, giving you a new way of doing something. It's not about just switching off the old way, because anger is appropriate at certain times, but not all of the time, not living there. So it's totally appropriate to have it. So that's another way on how to deal with anger. Touch that little finger. And another way of dealing with anger is to tap it out. Again, there's some videos online on my YouTube channel of me tapping out anger or different emotions. I mean, one of the best ways to tap out anger essentially is ask yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. It's always a good way to start this process out. How high your anger is. Tap underneath your nose, which will be the mustache area if you're a guy, or an Italian woman. So remember, send your hate mails to mal@LUKEnosisHypnosis.com. Just kidding, not really. And if you tap underneath your bottom lip about 10 times, and then check in with yourself where your anger is, it would, one of three things will happen. It will either completely disappear, it will go down drastically, or it won't only go down by about 2 points. If that's the case, you might need to do it a couple of times. That's the second thing to do. The third way of dealing with anger is just sit with it. Just sit with the anger. Don't go and send that text because you are overstimulated in that moment, or send that nasty email. Just sit with it. Don't distract yourself with social media, any of that nonsense, or porn, or video games, or music. Just go out somewhere, be by yourself, and just sit with it. Don't ruminate on all the reasons you should feel angry and get caught up. Just get into what's the sensation. Well, it feels like I've got this corrosive, vibrating kind of acid in my throat that's going down to my heart. All right, just deal with the sensation. Actually, don't deal with it, sit with it, because I'm going to guarantee you one thing is, whatever that sensation is, it will go at some point, probably a lot quicker than you think, because any negative emotion, the only reason they come up is so you can let them go. If you keep suppressing it like a jack in a box, one day you're going to open and that fucking jack in the box is going to hit you in the nose or in the chin and knock you out, you know. And nobody likes jack in the boxes, and nobody likes clowns, and there's a reason for that. Clowns are evil. And another thing to do is always ask yourself, this is the fifth way now to deal with anger, is ask yourself, what's the sadness below this? What's the sadness that this anger is covering up? And just sit with it. You'll probably, oh, you know what? I'm really angry at this person, but I'm not really angry. I'm just hurt. I'm hurt because I didn't return a phone call. I'm hurt because I didn't celebrate my birthday. I am hurt because they didn't send me that text. I'm hurt because that person got that job instead of me. I'm hurt because whatever it is, your anger is a response to you being hurt on some level, consciously or unconsciously. So if you allow yourself to be vulnerable with yourself and be like, what's this anger covering up? What sadness is this anger covering up? And you just sit with it. You allow yourself to be vulnerable with yourself and be like, I was hurt. I was hurt. Like a big lion, I was hurt. I got a thorn in my paw, and it hurts, friggin' hurts, and now I'm going to pull that out, and I'm going to be with it. I'm going to be with that sadness. And then oftentimes that anger self-corrects. It's just a protective mechanism most of the time. So a quick recap on how to deal with anger: the little finger hold, the tap-in process that I taught you in those videos are at LUKEnosis at my YouTube channel, YouTube/LUKEnosis. You can just sit with it. Just sit with it. Sit with the sensation, not the label, and just notice how it feels in your body, the sensation, as opposed to an emotional label. That is the third way of dealing with it. And just ask yourself, what sadness is below this? What sadness is all of this anger covering up? And just being with it, being vulnerable with yourself. Being vulnerable with yourself and just sitting with it and be like, yeah, I was hurt. You know, I might be a friggin' adult. I may be a man with a deep, strong beard and a wonderful British accent with 24 and counting tattoos and amazing muscles. But you know what? That thing hurt me. It friggin' hurt me. That's why I'm angry. That's why I'm acting out right now. It hurt me. And inside we all essentially have the emotional intelligence of a 5-year-old. And 5-year-olds get very hurt very, very quickly because they're emotional beings. So just sit with it. And amazing things can happen when you do that. And I once heard this great quote, and the quote is, being angry with someone else is a bit like you taking poison and hoping the other person dies from it. When you have all that anger, oftentimes you're internalizing it on yourself. You're just hurting yourself. You're ruminating those visions, those emotions about someone that you feel that wronged you somewhere in your life at some point. Maybe it's many years ago and they're no longer around. But you keep thinking it. You keep that anger around. It's like taking that poison and hoping that the other person who wronged you gets sick or dies or get hurt. I don't care. It's all in your head. They're never going to get affected by the visions you have in your head or the feelings you feel. It's only you that are having to deal with that, and you that are having to carry around that metaphorical rucksack filled with the bricks and the stones of anger that just fucking weigh you down, are exhausting. So sometimes it's alright, guys, to put the fucking bag down, to empty it, or to put it down completely. If you ever need to pick it up, it'll be there if you need it. But you don't need it nearly as much as you think that you do. If you would like to get a fact sheet of the 4 ways that I've just outlined on how to deal with anger, then shoot me an email at mail, at LUKEnosis, LUKENOSIS.com, and say, Luke, I'd like that fact sheet on those 4 ways that you beautifully, articulately spelled out on your podcast about how to deal with it, and I shall send you one. As always, I have been a Hypnopunk, coming to you live from the penthouse suite somewhere in a metropolis known as Toronto. Always believe.